Hey guys, what is up? It's Duncan, and today I'm here with a video on the HP Slate. Now, we've been listening and hearing a lot about the HP Slate in the past few months, but recently a lot of new information has come forward, including basically full specs and a lot of really good information. So I'm going to go ahead and run you guys through everything we know, and well, I'll just be honest, the HP Slate is looking really, really solid. So anyway, let's get this one started. Okay guys, so to begin with, let's just go ahead and give you guys a brief overview of what the HP Slate is all about. Now, a few months back, they showed off the HP Slate, which is very much going to be a competitor to the iPad, the Juju, and quite a few other of the recent tablets that have been coming out. Now, the main thing that sets the HP Slate apart from the rest is the fact that it runs full Windows 7 Home Premium. Now, this is a big deal, I think, because it allows you to have full control over all the applications you run. Of course, you can run, like Photoshop, video editors, obviously Flash, you could run any browser. It's a really, really cool thing. And of course, the HP Slate, it's not going to be perfect because of Windows 7, because on the downside, it's not a OS that's made for your fingers, it's made for a mouse and keyboard. But it's not going to be stock Windows 7. They're going to put a little bit of a skin over it, I suppose, to help it be more finger friendly. But recently, a bunch of specs and a lot more information has come out over it. So I'm going to go ahead and run you guys through some of what we know and what it looks really good. So, excuse me, I've got my computer here. I'm going to read out some of the specs. It's going to have an 8.9-inch display, which is a bit smaller than the 9.7-inch display on the iPad. It's also going to be a bit smaller resolution, 1024 by 600 compared to 1024 by 768. It's not that big a deal. Personally, I actually kind of like the fact that it has a smaller screen, just because the iPad seems like it's going to be a pretty decent size, but I think it's going to be a lot better to have a smaller tablet that's not going to be, really, really large. And everything seems to say that the HP Slate is going to be a good bit smaller than the iPad. So continuing on, the processor is going to be a 1.6 gigahertz Intel Atom processor. This is pretty good because while the iPad has a decent processor, it's a 1 gigahertz PA Semi processor, which is basically just an upgraded version of the iPhone processor. This really is going to unlock a lot more. It's going to bring it more from the power of an iPhone to more like the power of a netbook. That's a big deal. Now, there's a lot of other things such as graphics support. Now, they don't actually say for sure what kind of graphics it has, but we assume it's probably going to be just like a processor, like the Broadcom HD processor, because they basically just say that it has support for graphics up to 1080p. That's pretty impressive. The iPads, it says on the thing, it says 720. It might be able to get hacked with 1080. We don't really know. But right out of the box, it looks like the HP Slate is definitely going to have a very large advantage when it comes to graphics and video playback. And speaking of graphics, of course, the iPad can run iPhone games and iPad games made specifically for it. But one really cool thing I think is going to appeal to a good amount of people for the HP Slate is the fact that it can run, obviously, computer games. Now, it does not have a CD or DVD drive, so you're going to have to download them. But it should, assuming that, it's not, hurt in some way, which I don't see why it wouldn't, it should be able to run some lower-end games like a netbook could run. For example, World of Warcraft would probably be able to be played on it, as well as a vast majority of, any game that's, I would say, more than 2, maybe 3 years old, should be able to be run on the HP Slate no problem. Now, of course, how these games are going to run without a keyboard, it's going to be kind of hard to tell. Another important feature of the HP Slate is the fact that it has an SD card reader. Now this is an important feature, I think, because it allows you, instead of with the iPad, let's say you buy a 16 gigabyte model, and later on down the road you go, oh wait, I wanted to get a bigger one. Well, you're out of luck. You basically have to buy another iPad if you need more room. Well, with this way, you could buy a lower end HP Slate, and then if you say, hey, I think I need a little bit more room, just buy a $20, $30 SD card, put it in there, you're good to go. And it supports SD up to SDXC cards, which is up to 128 gigabytes of memory. Although a 128 gigabyte card would probably cost more than the HP Slate itself, but it's good that you can go ahead and do that. Another really nice feature is the fact that the price looks to be competitive with the iPad. Now, if you don't know already, the iPad has 16, not including, we don't know the 3G, but this is just for Wi-Fi only. The iPad is, for 16 gigabytes, it is $4.99. For 32 gigabytes, it's $5.99, and for 64 gigabytes, it's $6.99. Well, the HP Slate is a little bit different. It's the base model comes with 32 gigabytes of storage, and it is going to be $549. Now that is $50 more expensive than the base iPad. But if you wanted to get a 32 gigabyte model of the iPad, you're actually saving $50 with the HP Slate. So it's kind of a mix. Where the money really makes sense is if you want a 64 gigabyte HP Slate, that only runs you $600, whereas it's $700 for an iPad. So that's just kind of something to consider. Now, one not quite so nice feature about the HP Slate is its battery life. Now, everyone has really liked the iPad battery life. The Apple says about 10 hours, and quite a few people get more like 12, 13 hours. It's really great battery life. Well, with HP Slate, it's really not quite so much. Even though technically on paper it has a bigger battery size, it's got all the components and everything take up a lot more power, and as such, they say that it's going to have about 5 hours of battery life. Now, I don't think that's going to be a deal breaker or anything. 5 hours is still a decent amount of battery life, especially for something that's a little bit more than a half an inch thin. But the fact that it's got, practically less than half of the battery life of the iPad is something that kind of hurts. Definitely the last feature I've got to go over is the fact that it has two cameras. We already knew this, but now we have a little bit more detail. So it does have two cameras. It has one on the front. It's just a VGA webcam, very small, but it's going to be excellent for video chats. Seriously, I think this is going to be a huge deal. I think it's going to be great to actually have your Slate and actually be looking at it, and you actually be able to video chat, especially if you had like a 3G model where you could be video chatting anywhere. And it also has a 3 megapixel camera on the back of the device, which is actually going to be, well, I'm not so sure how useful it's going to be. I don't imagine, you see something cool, like, your cell phone, yeah, you can take a picture real quick. I don't know if you're going to want to pull out your tablet and take a picture. But hey, it's included, and it's a pretty decent feature. Hey guys, so that's all we know about the HP Slate so far. To be honest, I really like it. I love the idea that it's going to run full Windows 7, so I can use, like Google Chrome, and not really have to worry about Apple really, restricting it. iPad, once it's jailbroken, it's going to be great. But, the HP Slate's going to come, fully customizable right out of the box. And in addition, they're going to have, it's not really clear on how good it's going to be, but they're going to have a full UI on top of it. Whether it might be just, an app launcher or what. But hopefully it should go in a ways into improving the HP Slate and actually allowing you to be really finger-friendly. Now that said, the price is going to be kind of a mixed bag. If you just look at the memory, which is where the iPad makes a lot of money, you can see that it's $50 more expensive, but you're also getting a 32 gigabyte, which is the same as the $50 more expensive version of the iPad. So it's kind of going to be a bit of a wash, I think. But if you're just looking for especially like a 64 gigabyte, it's really hard to, ignore the iPad just because, it's going to be a lot more expensive and you're not going to have SD cards which could expand it farther. So, I don't know. I just don't think that memory is going to be a huge deal. I think if you're going to buy this, you're going to buy these because of what they do, not how much they can store. But it's definitely a pretty important factor. Anyway, guys, what do you think about these? Are you interested in the iPad? Interested in the HP Slate? Maybe both? Maybe neither. Definitely leave me in the comments. I'm really interested to know what you guys are thinking. Personally, I really like the HP Slate, and I also like the iPad. I don't know. I'm just going to have to wait and see before the HP Slate comes out. But right now, I think I'm probably a little bit more on the HP Slate side of the fence. But hey, who knows? Anyway, guys, thanks for watching.